But when we're in that building, we can't be successful if we don't have strong grassroots advocates working with us as well. And we had the strongest grassroots campaign that I think I've ever seen in Equality North Carolina's history. Rebecca Mann, our community organizer, did a phenomenal job, along with many of our interns, organizing a postcard campaign, which generated thousands of postcards from people all over the state to their legislators, asking them to support this important legislation. We held activist trainings around the state, not just in the major urban areas of the Triangle Triad and Charlotte, but in places like Greenville and Rocky Mount, Asheville and Boone, getting people engaged at the local level, talking to their legislators, having those conversations, which made a tremendous difference. We also organized our largest ever day of action, our lobby day, when people from across the state come to Raleigh to meet face-to-face with their legislators. In 1999, when I first started at Equality North Carolina, our executive director at that time told me that she would go into legislators' offices and they would tell her, we don't have any gay people in my district, so I really don't need to worry about your issues. They don't say that anymore. One of the things I was particularly proud of with our advocacy day as well was for the first time we had a group that particularly focused on getting LGBT people of color to meet with members of the Black Caucus. The Black Caucus has been tremendous allies to us over the years, but many of them are not quite there yet on marriage and relationship recognition issues. And so starting those conversations and helping to transform some of them from yes votes to champions by getting them to really understand the lived experience of LGBT people of color is critically important. We also formed a transgender policy task force. We knew that a lot of legislators were still just kind of starting to figure out the sexual orientation thing and weren't quite there yet on gender identity. So having members of the transgender community actively involved in our advocacy, helping craft a language that ended up in the final bill, and educating legislators, sitting down and sharing their experience and getting them to understand what we're really even talking about with gender identity was critically important. So all of those things contributed so much to our success. We also couldn't have done it without amazing legislative champions. We have some really incredible friends in the General Assembly. People like Representative Rick Glazier, who initially led the way on this bill in the last session and carried it in the House this year. Rick is from a conservative district in Fayetteville. He's not from Chapel Hill. He's not in one of those easy liberal districts where he can always do the right thing and know that the voters are going to have his back. But he didn't hesitate to take on this issue because he knew it was the right thing to do. And his passion and his commitment and arm twisting made an incredible difference. This year, Senator Julia Boseman, our only openly gay state legislator, took the lead on the Senate side and was an incredible champion. The Senate has always been a challenge for us. They don't like controversy very much over there in the Senate. And Julia was not going to rest until they got this bill through. I saw her talking one-on-one with some of the good old boys from down east, and the look on their face was interesting when they had to talk about this with her, but she really brought them over to our side. We've also got to thank the leadership. Speaker Hackney, who I mentioned earlier, was a tireless advocate for this, and his staff really made this happen. Lieutenant Governor Dalton, who has not always been a great friend to our community. Initially, he was a supporter of the constitutional amendment when it first came up 6 years ago, has become one of our greatest champions in state government. When he was still a state senator, he was a strong advocate for this bill. And now as Lieutenant Governor, he made important rulings from the chair that made it possible to get this bill through the Senate. And the Senate leadership and Mark Basnight and Tony Rand really came through for us on this bill as well. We also have really incredible allies who've been working with us on other issues. Susan Fisher from Asheville, who championed the Healthy Youth Act, Paul Lukey from Durham, and Charlie Albertson from Beulahville were the champions of our non-discrimination bill for state employees. And from right here in Greensboro, Representative Pricey Harrison led the way on hate crimes, and we still have a lot of work to do on that, even after the passage of the federal bill. You know, it's not sexy, but we couldn't have done it without building a stronger organization. You know, really growing over the last few years, having the staff that it takes to organize people around the state and to engage people in our work, and to raise the money that it takes to put on a campaign of this sort. And under the leadership of our development director, Kate Flaminio, we've actually managed to grow a little bit this year despite the recession, and she deserves so much credit, and our board and our volunteers who helped us raise money, and all of you who are donors here as participants today, and donors in so many other ways through the year. We couldn't do it without the financial support as well. And finally, one of the things that we've really learned over the year is the power of telling our stories. And this year, we really had to put a face on what did it look like for students who were actually facing bullying in schools. So we did it in a bunch of creative ways. We asked our supporters to share their stories. We had a blog that had a new story with someone's experience of bullying, not just on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity, but other issues as well. And we shared those stories with legislators. We actually made a YouTube video highlighting some of the most poignant moments from those stories, which Senator Boseman emailed to all of her colleagues the day before the vote and asked them to take 2 minutes to watch this video and understand the impact that their vote would have on young people. We had people all over the state contact their legislators, not just sending the standard form letter, but taking the time to really write very thoughtful comments and to share their stories. And we know from talking to legislators, because we even heard it in the floor debate, that those stories made a huge impression on them and really swung some people to our side. We also held a really great press conference to kick off the bill. And one of the highlights, we had legislators there, we had incredible community leaders there, but the person who stole the show was Kate Mabe, a student from Winston-Salem, who faced tremendous bullying and actually had to transfer high schools to avoid that harassment. Kate was so courageous to come forward and stand in front of legislators and in front of the press and tell her story in such a moving and heartfelt way, and we know that that made an impression on folks. And we'll be recognizing her at the gala tonight as well. So that's how we did it. It takes all of those things. You've got to have the grassroots organizing, you've got to have the organization building, you've got to have the professional lobbying, you've got to put the emotional face on it and share our stories. And those are the lessons that we're taking forward as we look for the next steps in North Carolina. The first thing we have to do, though, is secure the victories that we had this year. Passing a bill is not enough. It doesn't get the job done completely. You know, laws are really just tools, but if they're not used, it doesn't really make as big a difference in people's lives. Right now, local school boards are in the process of updating their bullying policies to comply with state law. And we have supporters around the state who are watching those discussions, making sure that it's being done. We're working with the Department of Public Instruction to help them with model policies and trainings to make sure that teachers and administrators understand what they need to do now that these policies are in place. And we're going to be releasing a Safe Schools Toolkit, which will help students and advocates in communities make sure that their school districts are not just putting the policy in place and forgetting about it, but actually making it a part of the life of their school.